All right, hey everyone. I am coming through again. I'm doing this live stream through Streamlabs OBS. Let me just check on one thing before I get off into my stream here. I just want to make sure that it shows that I am live. Let me just check on one thing over here. Okay, yep, it shows that I am live. Oh boy, I tell you. All right, let's go ahead and get this going then. That OBS, I'm just gonna have to just transfer it all over to Streamlabs OBS and just do it through there. Seems like I'm having a little more success through there without having the issues, but let's go ahead and start this all over again. Right, and then let me do one other thing over here. It says I have to sign in on. Let me take this over here. Hold on one second. I have so many damn windows open. All right. I wonder why I won't we'll just keep a window open over here for YouTube. But let's go ahead and get started back on this here. So as I was saying, the first episode of Lanterns, I thought it was fine. It had my interest peaked. I was ready to go into the next episode, wanting to see more of where they're going to be taking this story. And then we get to the next episode, and this episode is aptly titled Trust Fall because my trust in this show has fallen dramatically. It starts off with this opening scene right here. Now, Jon Stewart is a trained soldier, and I'm not going to sit here and say that all trained soldiers are all going to be heavy sleepers or light sleepers or anything like that. But I would think that Jon Stewart being trained by Hal Jordan to become the next Lantern would actually make him more of a light sleeper because he knows he's involved in some stuff that is extraterrestrial in nature. But yet, here we have Jon Stewart just laying here, heavy sleeper. The way he's sleeping, I'm thinking that he might have his hand on a gun that's underneath the pillow. No, he's not. He doesn't have a hand on the pillow or a gun under the pillow or anything like that. He actually is just a heavy sleeper. And Hal Jordan was able to get the jump on him, splash some water on him, and forced him to wake up very rapidly and violently. And right after that happens, we're off to the races with the F-bombs. Now, this is supposed to be James Gunn's attempt to create a cinematic universe for families, for everyone to enjoy. But nope, not here. It's Jon Stewart is just off with the F-bombs, F-bombs, F-bombs. And this opening scene made Jon Stewart even more unlikable. I thought he was okay. I already had a low regard for Jon Stewart, specifically when he was banging a grandmother in last week's episode. And more on that here in this episode, but not the actual sex scene or anything, which I'm glad we didn't get that. But it made him even more unlikable for me with his just constant disrespect of Hal Jordan and the constant use of the F-bombs and everything. And it just irked me to no end. And I was like, man, all right, I'm ready to just be done with this character. I don't want to have anything to do with this character. So we got that going here. And outside of the hotel, Hal Jordan gives the ring to uh, Jon Stewart and tells Jon Stewart, hey, go ahead and start flying. Start flying. And this, you see the look right here with the look that John's giving Hal Jordan. He's just, why don't you give me some space? I can't actually fly with you so close. Yeah, you actually can, but it's just all the disrespect right there when it comes to that particular scene. Jon Stewart can't take off, he can't fly, but he is able to create a construct. He creates this little bird that's gonna stay on his side, and there really is no meaning to this bird other than the fact that Jon Stewart was able to create the construct as opposed to making himself fly. Hal Jordan, by the way, tells him that for me, flight's very easy. I'm an Air Force pilot, and Hal Jordan, or rather Jon Stewart, blows him off. Yeah. I know you're a flight pilot. You're all that. He doesn't show any type of respect or anything. But this construct that's created there, it somehow after Jon Stewart gives the ring back to Hal Jordan, the construct stays, and for the remainder of the episode and everything, that construct is there, and people wonder why, or people who know about the construct, they continuously ask, well, why is that construct still present? Jon Stewart doesn't know. All he knows is he just made it materialize. Hal Jordan tells him, hey, as part of your training, I want you to keep that construct around and not lose it. Oh, by the way, he also instructs Jon Stewart, Hal Jordan does, to go to his house to get his lantern so that he can recharge his lantern. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. I was thinking that Hal Jordan can create a pocket dimension so he can get that lantern whenever he feels like it. Well, apparently not. It's stuck in his house in another state that Jon Stewart needs to go to get and bring it to Hal Jordan. But the entire reason is that he wanted to send Jon Stewart on a fetch quest because he wants to conduct an investigation inside this town by himself, which the town obviously has a lot of things going on with it for aliens. Here's Hal Jordan back at the football field. He still has his suspicions about what's going on with the town here. So he gets in his car. This part I don't understand. He's walking through these metal detectors, and he's trying to figure out why they're not tripping. He's got metal on him. If you're wearing any kind of metal, you're gonna trip the metal detector. That's just point blank. It'll trip it, and then if it trips the metal detector, there's obviously going to be someone there, a guard or something, that tells you, hey, let's take off the metal and have you walk through it again. It's kind of interesting that these metal detectors are just out there in the middle of the space. People can just walk around these metal detectors, and that's going to be important here in just a moment because of what they really are. Now, Hal Jordan, what he decides to do, he goes back to his car and he takes off his front bumper and then he's going to walk through with his front bumper. Now, I'm pretty sure this is a Camry, and I am certain that the front bumpers on Camrys are plastic grills. I don't think they're actually metal. In fact, I don't think too many front bumpers on a lot of modern cars are metal. You can get some metal, but that's going to be aftermarket for the most part. But I think from the factory, they're not metal; they're plastic. You guys can correct me if I'm incorrect on that. But the reason why I bring that up is he goes in the back of his vehicle and he gets a tire iron. Why do you need to take off the bumper? Why not just walk through the metal detector with your tire iron? It'll pick up your metal. It'll pick up the tire iron. There's no reason for you to take off your grill. You don't need to take off the grill or anything, but he takes off the grill and he starts walking through the metal detector. You don't need to do that. He's driving through town. All the people in this town, they're all at this PTO meeting. He gets out of his car and he temporarily flies for a moment. Let me just back up here just a minute. This is where he just temporarily flies so that he can look around to see where people are at. And he sees that they're all at the PTO meeting there. I don't know why he needed to do that. His ring does not have a lot of power left, and he's going to fall right back down to the earth. And there we go right there. He falls down. Now, I would think that if you fall from that height, you're going to be very hurt very badly, at least with some broken legs. But we know, who cares about that? Who cares about small details like that? Now, the next thing that he does is he gets in his car and he starts driving backwards. I was like, why do you need to do that? Why do you need to drive backwards? There's no reason for you to drive backwards. Just turn your car around and just drive back normally. Driving backwards like that is very dangerous and all, but nobody cares about that. Another attention to detail. Now Hal Jordan comes to the PTO meeting and they're all talking about him. Now, why would all the citizens be talking about Hal Jordan at this PTO meeting? That's because everybody in town are aliens. Well, maybe not the sheriff, but everybody else more than likely is. And we're going to get to that here in just a second. Hal Jordan ends up sitting next to his lawyer, and they are very loud. They're talking. Everybody can hear what they're talking about. That raises the ire of his lawyer's wife, who happens to be the sheriff. They're just talking back and forth about his father, the lawyer's father, who happens to be the owner of that ranch that John Stewart had John Stewart, he banged the rancher's wife, the grandmother, and Hal Jordan, they were on that ranch in last week's episode. Hal Jordan obviously knows that the rancher is hiding something on his property, and he's trying to pepper the son with questions. And this is where you know that the son is probably an alien, because he really is allowing a citizen to really, punk him around, for lack of a better term, because he's a lawyer. He should know how to outmaneuver Hal Jordan, at least with some of the questions that Hal Jordan is asking. The lawyer doesn't come off as being very confident in any of the answers that he's given. He's letting Hal Jordan really lead him around, because Hal Jordan knows that there are things going on in this town that are out of the ordinary. And this is where Hal Jordan gets up. He leaves. John Stewart is calling him on his phone. He's very open and blatant about it. He wanted to ask the sheriff some questions about the dead aliens, because there were four that were shot, and then there was a fifth one that died after he didn't try, he actually did. He detonated himself inside of the basement of the sheriff's department. Hal Jordan did something very heroic. Can you criticize the scene from last week's episode? Yes, but I still thought it was pretty heroic with what he did. He covered up the alien with his ring. He constructed a shield barrier around the alien, contained the explosion, and prevented people from dying, namely himself, the sheriff, and John Stewart. So I still thought that was pretty cool to see that. But he wanted to talk to the sheriff about that because you got all these dead aliens that are popping up in the city. But John Stewart takes a call. He leaves the area because John Stewart is having some difficulty finding the key inside of the key to get inside of Hal Jordan's home. And if I can get let's get on the picture here. This entire house is Hal Jordan's home. Now we know that Hal Jordan can't afford to live in this house, but apparently Hal Jordan has saved a very rich man's kid from a traumatic event, and as a gift, he gave this house to Hal Jordan. I wonder what the taxes would be on something like that, because you just can't gift. You just can't give a house to somebody like this. The tax man wants a piece of that action, but hey, what do I know? I only got a master's in taxation. Haven't done anything with it. But anyways, that's the entire way. He's got this big giant house that he lives in by himself. He sent John Stewart to go there to get the key, and John Stewart couldn't find the key, but he leaves the key in this small rock that's right off to the side of, and the rock that has the key for him to get inside the house. John Stewart is now walking around this big giant house all by himself. We got all these pictures that Hal Jordan was a part of, because he did a lot of, I guess. This is the thing. We don't see Hal Jordan really doing a lot of heroic feats because we're supposed to see him as this disheveled alcoholic loser. Those are some of the words that Mahler had used to describe him in one of his tweets in a video that I did last week. But we never see him doing anything heroic. So we're only shown things like pictures that he was in. Oh, let me get off of that, because we don't need to see that. I'm gonna get on that here in just a minute too. So we see him sitting here next to Pope Benedict, but we don't see him doing anything heroic as to why he is sitting next to Pope Benedict. So we're shown these things, we're told these things, but we don't see Hal Jordan actually doing anything heroic. In fact, the way he's being portrayed in this particular episode is far worse than how he was portrayed in last week's episode. He just comes off as arrogant, prudish, headstrong, and there's no rhyme or reason to his actual behavior. I showed this scene right here, and let me get off of that again, because I can't really show that scene where Hal Jordan goes to the morgue, because every time it comes up, I'm pretty sure you guys have caught just a little bit of the view of it. They show us this entire naked body of a man, and his genitals are showing. And I'm like, there's just no reason for you to have to do that in this type of show. But nope, here we have it. James Gunn, the executive producer on it, David Lindelof, however the first name is, Tom King, they don't care. It's HBO Max. We'll just go ahead and show it. We'll drop all the F-bombs everywhere. We'll show the genitals of a man, and he's dead anyway, so I mean that's how it all would look. It's like, no, you don't need to show it. You don't need to show any of that at all. And in fact, as he's dragging out the body, they know that they don't need to show it because they have Hal Jordan cover up the body with a sheet. But we're back inside of Hal Jordan's house, and you saw the suit there. John Stewart sees the Green Lantern suit. He sees it's hanging up. He asks Hal Jordan, hey, do you want me to bring this suit? And Hal Jordan said, no, you can just leave that there. You don't need to bring the suit or anything. I just need you to get my lantern that I put inside of a pocket dimension inside of my house. This box right here contains the lantern. It has a pocket dimension. Remember earlier in my review, I said that normally what Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart would do is that lantern would pretty much be next to him, because they would create a pocket dimension that they can just automatically reach into and get that lantern at a moment's notice. So yeah, so they do a pocket dimension, but they make, for whatever reason, for plot convenience, they put the box inside of the house in another state to get Jon Stewart on a fetch quest to get him out of the way so that Hal Jordan can have this entire investigation to himself, all so that Jon Stewart can reach into the pocket dimension to get the lantern. Absolutely stupid, absolutely absurd. See, there he is right there, reaching into that pocket dimension to look for that lantern. And he eventually gets the lantern. There's the lantern right there. He sits it down for everyone to see. And now he has to go feed this pet that Hal Jordan told him about. The pet's name is Earl. It's basically a Venus flytrap. That's what it is. It's a Venus flytrap. It's a meat eater, so you got to feed it meat. Don't know why Hal Jordan has this plant, but this is our first well, I guess you can say that this is our second alien life form, because we had our first alien life form, which looks like a human being, in the last week's episode. But officially, I'm gonna say that this is our first alien life form right here that we can see in the flesh, and it's without having it being transformed. So he's feeding that. And now the reason why Hal Jordan had to go back to the morgue and get the alien dead bodies is because he goes back to these alien detectors, and he's dragging the bodies through the alien detectors. They trip. So it's officially now known by Hal Jordan that, one, these are aliens, they're confirmed, and two, there's alien technology that's being used on Earth, and they're not supposed to be using any type of alien technology on Earth. It's kind of like Men in Black in that regard. As by the way, as Jon Stewart is getting ready to leave Hal Jordan's house, he gets jumped by these men. He gets thrown into a van. Now, I don't know why they didn't chain him down a little more so that when he comes to, he can't fight back. Well, that's not the case. They needed plot convenience, so we can have this really weak action scene of Jon Stewart and this man who happens to be an alien. As you can see, he picked him up really high through Jon Stewart into the ceiling of this van. They didn't tie him down, so we can have this action scene right here. Now both of them launch out of the car. They both should be dead by now. They both should be dead. I'm just saying, they both should be dead, because if you're gonna fall out of a car like that, one, you first got that momentum from being pushed out of a moving vehicle. You're not gonna just keep rolling over. You're gonna hurt yourself really hard. Hey Sarge, how you doing, man? Nice for you to show up. But then on top of that, you got all these cars that are coming behind them. Like, no, they would be hit. They would be hit. And then one of the things that just makes no sense to me is Jon Stewart. Look at all that space on the edge of the road. Your first instinct should be to get out of the highway, just to get out of the highway so that you don't get hit by these cars. No, that's not going to happen. Jon Stewart instead chooses to run through the oncoming traffic. Why do you do this? Well, what sense does this make? And then he gets hit by this. Let's go back just a little bit. Let's just go back a little bit, because I want you guys to see this. Why is he doing this? Why is he running through the traffic like that? That makes no sense. Get to the side of the road. No, 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 no. I'm going to stay in the traffic and try to outrun this guy in the middle of traffic. And as he's trying to run away, then he gets hit by the van. That should again kill Jon Stewart. That should, of course, kill Jon Stewart. Oh my goodness. This show is just getting, it's just bad. It's just bad. Here we have Hal Jordan. He gets pulled over by the police officer. He knows he has these dead bodies in his car. The cop, super cop, girl boss cop, however, whatever you want to call her, she's exasperated by Hal Jordan's actions. They get into this argument on the side of the road. Hal Jordan is telling him that now, hey, I know that something is in this going wrong in this town because my gut is telling me that something's going on in this town, and your father-in-law, he's hiding something from me. He's not telling me everything. And the super cop girl boss, she knows that there are things going on in this town that she does not really want to be at liberty to say because she's trying to protect not only herself, but Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, and anybody else who was a human from what's going on. I suspect that her husband and her father-in-law are aliens. If they're not, if they're not aliens, they're certainly in cahoots with aliens, and that comes up in the next scene because the super cop girl boss tells Hal Jordan to follow her to the ranch because he was gonna go out there anyway. So they go to the ranch. Originally, the gate boss, whatever the guard, is not gonna let him on the property. The super cop girl boss convinces him to let him go in. He still relents, or he is still reluctant, but then Terminator Cromartie, and that's the only thing I know him from is from Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles. Oh yeah, that's right. Abby actually says he saved the bird. Yes, he saved the bird. Yes, I got to go back over here because in this scene, which I don't know what, it just makes no sense. This scene right here, there it is right there. The alien saves Jon Stewart's bird. What? Why would you save the bird? But here's the other thing. Where is the lantern? I don't recall them bringing the lantern with them. If they did, go ahead and tell me in the chat if that happened. I don't recall them bringing the lantern along with them. And this bird, I guess maybe the reason why they needed to have the bird with them is because, again, they needed plot convenience. The bird flies out of his hand and then attacks him, which gives Jon Stewart the opening to be able to start fighting him. I know a lot of people like to talk about the mystery box of this, and that's one of the big issues of the show, the mystery box. But for me, it's always just plot conveniences. Plot things that need to be done to advance the story that make no sense otherwise. It makes no sense for this guy to save that bird other than to create the situation for Jon Stewart to launch a counterattack against them. It obviously doesn't work. He gets captured. So it makes no sense for that bird to be there, but again, we need to advance the story. Going back up here to the ranch, Cromartie, and as I was saying, Cromartie, if you guys don't know the name Cromartie, That's the name of the Terminator inside of Sarah Connor Chronicles. And not to get long story short, this actor right here, he plays some dude. Cromartie got seriously damaged. He got plastic surgery done. The Cromartie Terminator was made to look like his character. He kills his character off, and now he became Cromartie the Terminator in Sarah Connor Chronicles. Which, if you guys are Terminator fans, Sarah Connor Chronicles is an absolute must-watch. For me, it's Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and then the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Those three are the best things that came out of the Terminator franchise. Everything else, don't watch. Well, if you guys know the anime Terminator Zero, that one was okay, but I think that was more of an Elseworlds type thing. It wasn't really part of the it's non-canon to the actual Terminator franchise. Anyways, back to this. Cromartie comes up. He sees Hal Jordan there. He keeps telling Hal Jordan, there's no reason for you to be out here. You've done your job. I like your work. Blah, blah, blah. It's time for you to go. Hal Jordan is persistent. Hal Jordan knows that Cromartie is in cahoots with the aliens and says, I think you are hiding technology on your ranch that belongs to the aliens, and I want to see what it is that you have. Cromartie says, I'm not at liberty to tell you anything outside of that. I have an NDA. And Hal Jordan rightly asks, well, why would a rancher have an NDA that prevents him from talking about stuff that's on his property? Cromartie shuts up and says, hey, now you're trespassing. If you come back out on my property, I'll have you shot. And to show that he's very serious, Hal Jordan walks on more onto his property. He tries to go after Cromartie, and that's when Cromartie, or rather Hal Jordan, gets shot. Really good shot, by the way. But I don't know anything about guns, but this dude got shot by a high caliber bullet in his shoulder. He should be out for quite some time. Even if the bullet went clean through, he should be out for some time. Well, we'll get to that here in just a minute. The next scene over here, Jon Stewart has been kidnapped by aliens. He's talking to an alien right now. This alien tells him, hey, there is a manhunter on your planet, and he's taking refuge here, and we need to find him. Now, I have an issue with him just coming out using the word manhunter. If these are aliens, and they've already dropped indications that these aliens are not really all that keen into human culture. In the first episode, we had Hal Jordan asking the alien that he was interviewing questions like who's president and stuff like Harry Potter, and tell me the number of Harry Potter movies and all that, and the alien couldn't answer properly. In this particular episode, this alien uses the word proximity, and Jon Stewart corrects him and says you should use the word more like close, because that actually would be more descriptive of the situation that we have with Hal Jordan. The alien agrees, but then he uses the word manhunter. Now I'm thinking, if these are aliens, they should have an alien word for manhunter. They shouldn't just come out and use a human word, manhunter. They should use an alien word and then tell Jon Stewart there really isn't a word in your language that describes what it is that is on your planet, but the closest I can think of is a man who is a hunter. And then Jon Stewart can come back and says, you mean like a manhunter? And then the alien says, oh yes, that's a really good word, a manhunter. That is just little things that would actually make the situation seem more believable, that you're actually talking with an actual alien. But it's just small things like that that just takes you out of the immersiveness, destroys the verisimilitude of the television show or the movie that you're putting out there. So that little thing kind of irked me, but I don't know if it irked you guys or anything, but it just, things like that just makes me just sit there and think that just a little bit more care about the writing of your show can actually make it that much more immersive and believable. Anyways, the reason why they captured John Stewart, don't know why they captured John Stewart. They really don't explain why they needed to capture John Stewart and why they just didn't. Well, no, they did. These aliens, they don't care for Hal Jordan. So, but they know John Stewart is close to Hal Jordan. So, okay, yeah, they now we understand why they would go after John Stewart. They go after John Stewart, capture him, tell him, hey, this manhunter that's on your planet, he's very dangerous. And in order for us to have you sympathize with us about how dangerous this manhunter is, we need to not torture you, but we're going to put this really strong device that forces memories into your head, this device right here, because you need to witness and feel what we aliens had gone through when dealing with this manhunter. And I say, you know, you could just ask John Stewart nicely, just say, hey, you know, can we do this? You got to trust us. We're going to take these cuffs off of you, but I want you to trust that what we are doing is very sound and very, and it helps, and help try to build that trust between the alien and John Stewart. Because if John Stewart's going to become the new Green Lantern, he's going to have to work with these aliens in the future. Anyways, nope, not going to do that. We instead have to force John Stewart to the ground and jam this thing up into his head and just force these thoughts into his head. You got to force him right off in there. And now John Stewart's eyes are rolling back. His little construct is flying around up in the sky somewhere inside the building. Because that, by the way, how is it that he's able to keep that construct if it's his consciousness that's created the construct, and while at the same time suffering something that is tremendously painful, like having memories and other stuff being jammed into your head all at the same time? Who cares? We don't need to explain that. We don't need to explain that whatsoever. So all that's happening to John. After it's all done, Mr. Big Bald Alien right here now says, hey, now that you know what the Manhunter has done to us, I need you to go back to Nebraska and find who this Manhunter is. And you have 48 hours to find the Manhunter. Otherwise, if you don't find the Manhunter and tell us, we're going to blow up all of Nebraska. Okay, yes, that's exactly what they said. Great negotiations, a great way to get someone on your side. And then they also tell him, don't tell Hal Jordan. That should be a clue to John Stewart. Say, hey, maybe these aliens are not very trustworthy. And it's a good thing that he does tell Hal Jordan at the end. We'll get towards that here in just a moment. But I wouldn't trust these aliens as far as I can throw them. First, you kidnap me. Then you jam your memories into me. And then you threaten the United States of America. John Stewart, you are a soldier. You are a Marine, is he a Marine? I think he's a Marine. You are a Marine. You still should have some type of contact with the United States government. You should probably tell them that these aliens are on Earth that are threatening to destroy Nebraska if they don't get their way. But no, they're not going to do that. That would require too much character, developing other characters and bringing them in. And Damon Lindelof, whatever his name is, and Tom King, They more so want to write a screed that is ripping on middle America, right wing Americans, conservatives, and all that, Christians, and they don't want to expand the anything outside of that. They want to keep everything contained to this town in Nebraska. So I don't think they're going to go down that road. If they do in the future, I will of course come back and eat crow on that, but I don't see them doing anything like that. Then we go over here to the hospital. Jon Stewart's laying up in the hospital. Super cop girl boss is keeping this man company. If my wife was keeping another man company, I would be pissed. I don't care how. I don't care what the situation is. If she's keeping another man company without telling me, I'm gonna be pissed. But nope. In this series here, James Gunn and Damon Lindelof and Tom King, I guess they love seeing women being wrong around other men because they like to be cuckolded or whatever. She's sitting over here keeping Hal Jordan company, not going back out doing any of the sheriff's duties. It's kind of interesting that she can do that, but I think that's kind of part of the mystery that's going on in this city. Notice something right here. There are no other patients in this building. There are no other patients. There's no other activity, no doctors, no nurses, nothing like that. It's another mystery box. Why are there no doctors? Why are there no other patients? Why are there no nurses? Why are there no staff? Well, there is one staff in this building. We'll get to that here. But nothing's going on here other than Hal Jordan and Super Cop Girl Boss. They're talking with each other. She mentions to Hal Jordan, hey, why do you keep saying the name Sinestro? Why do you keep saying the name Sinestro? And Hal Jordan tries to pull that line. Oh, well, that's above my pay grade. That's above your pay grade. I'm not going to tell you anything. But it doesn't work with Super Cop Girl Boss because Super Cop Girl Boss already knows Sinestro because she looks at her phone and she starts recounting to Hal Jordan his history with Sinestro. She's putting on her glasses and starts reading from her phone. But yeah, this information is just so readily available on the internet. How Hal Jordan had these issues with Sinestro. But what she's reading is, I think when Hal Jordan in the comics first met Sinestro, he had to put Sinestro away. He had to lock him up, and he had to handle that because Sinestro had did some very bad shit. She recounts that to Hal Jordan, and Hal Jordan is not surprised that that information is on the internet. Got her little smug Karen face on right there. See, I know exactly your history, so there's no reason for you to keep it from me. Yeah, but it just makes absolutely no sense. And she starts yelling at Hal Jordan about how he keeps getting in her way, keeps making her life miserable in this small rural America town in the middle of Nebraska, wherever it's located in Nebraska. And then she starts dropping dog whistles, right-wing dog whistles, for lack of a better word, talking about how I'm trying to prevent an insurrecting happening here in the city. And I didn't need you to go off trying to storm that ranch. Like, okay, yeah, we get it. White man and January 6th, we get all that. All these little things that they keep dropping to make this a political allegory. We already know that this is a political allegory for illegal aliens. They dropped a lot of that stuff in last week's episode, talking about we don't want the colonizers here. We want to try to keep our world from being invaded by these colonizers, and we want to keep them out and make sure that whoever's supposed to be here is supposed to be here. It is an actual a human being and all that. We got all that. They're doing the exact same thing here in this hospital scene, and stuff like that just sticks out like a sore thumb, and it becomes more what's the word I'm looking for? Acute. Acute's a good word. It becomes more acute because the show is that bad. I thought the first episode was fine, but this second episode, it really just shows how it's just an amalgamated mess that was just thrown together, and you can feel the smugness and the contempt that the showrunners have for the characters and for the audience that's watching it, and for a certain particular for half the country. For half the country, you can feel it on this show. Anyways, Hal Jordan gets up, he gets out of bed. We get to this scene right here. They come up to the receptionist. Let me just back up here just a little bit. Here we go. This is the only other person that is in the hospital. And as you can see, Hal Jordan's getting ready to sign himself out. Oh, actually, I take that back. There was somebody in the background that just walked by. So there's two people that were there. There are two people that were there. And they're only going to keep him there because he got shot in the shoulder. You still got the bullet hole, which has no blood around it. I don't know how that happens. Don't know how that happens that you get shot and there's no blood around the hole. And they just wouldn't let you out of the hospital like that even after you got shot. I guess they're doing it because she's the sheriff and she was there. She witnessed Hal Jordan get shot, by the way, which another thing, they said that trespassing, that if you walk onto another man's property and you're trespassing, they can shoot you. I don't think it actually works that way. I don't think you could just simply shoot somebody because they're trespassing on your property. I don't know how it works in Nebraska, but I know here in Arizona, if somebody's trespassing, you just can't simply just shoot them. That would get you in more trouble than it would get them in trouble. I definitely know in Georgia, you can't just shoot somebody for trespassing. Remember Ahmaud Arbery? If you guys remember that name, the McMichael father and son, when they tried to do a citizen's arrest on that guy and he ended up getting killed, they got in trouble for it. Or they didn't want him to really be doing anything on someone that was trespassing. So, but just back to this right here, she witnessed him get shot. She's the sheriff. She should have at least mentioned something, or at least arrested the person that shot Hal Jordan. No, they're not going to do that because conveniently, she's the daughter-in-law of the rancher who owns the property who shot Hal Jordan. So they're not going to arrest that. Oh, look at this, by the way. The computers, nobody's logged in. I think that we did see that person walk back there. I'm not going to rewind it back. They were walking back there, so there were two people in the hospital here. There she was. There she goes right there. She was walking by. We got this blank sheet where Hal Jordan has to sign himself. I don't think that works in a hospital. I don't think the patient gets to sign themselves out on a sign out sheet. If this was urgent care, maybe, but even in urgent care, you don't sign yourself out. These are just little nitpicky things, and it may sound like I'm nitpicking, but it's these little things that just add up. When you have something bad, they just are glaring. They're like just little lights that are just shining in the darkness of a bad show. If it was a good show, we'd be like, that's not believable, but okay, we'll let it slide. But they just keep compiling in this show because it's just so awful. So anyways, they're all blank. I'm assuming this was the super cop girl boss that signed Hal Jordan into the hospital. So now he has to sign himself out. I don't know how that works out. Wait a minute. But then, shouldn't she have just signed him in? But this is a sign out. His name is already signed out. Oh, so somebody else signed. I'm all kinds of confused right here. So the girl boss super cop signed him out already, and I guess that's not the one thing that catches his eye is all the other blank pages and no names for anybody else. So he notices that there's nobody here. Now we do find out something interesting about the super cop girl boss. Hal Jordan asks her, "Hey, you're not from around here. I know you're not from around here. You don't seem like you're from a small town." She does let him know that she's from Gotham. So we have confirmation that in this world there is a Gotham City. Obviously there was going to be a Gotham City. It's kind of not funny. We got the dropping of the name Gotham before we got an actual Batman movie. And this just speaks to the stupidity of James Gunn. He gave us Supergirl before he gave us Batman. Like, what is wrong with you? Batman Brave and the Bold should have come out before Supergirl. But I digress on that point. Anyways, they're walking through this hospital. There's nothing else going on. Hal Jordan's looking around and says, "Hey, there's a lot of empty stuff that's going on in this hospital. There's a lot of unused equipment and all that." And the super cop girl boss just says, "Hey, I'm not going to respond to that. We just got to get up out of the hospital." And Hal Jordan just lets it slide and just keeps on walking out. And then here comes the scene, which I think is the worst scene in this entire episode. Remember in last week's episode, Jon Stewart got it on with the GILF, the grandmother I like to, you know what? Well, she's in the cafe because plot conveniences demand that she be there so that Jon Stewart and her can have this really weird interaction where they're basically tearing down white people. I don't understand any other reason why they would be here. I would think that the character, and I was looking at the DA before I got into my own video. He has his show that he does on the weekends going on right now. He had made a good analogy of the wife, the GILF here, and Cromartie, who is his wife, that it might be an allegory for JD Vance and his wife Usha. And now that he mentioned that, I'm like, you know what? That actually is a really good comparison. Because these guys, these leftist showrunners, they just have contempt for people they disagree with. They have contempt for Trump. They have contempt for JD Vance, which, hey, politically, if that's fine. I don't care about that. But you got to inject these things, which people are automatically going to start gravitating towards. And once it's there, they're not going to be able to get anything else out of their mind. This old woman, which Jon Stewart should have just stayed at the booth, but again, plot conveniences requires you to have him go to the booth to talk to this old lady that he had banged, who Cromartie knew that he had banged, because, hey, it must be nice to eat off another man's grill. Oh my God, get out of here. Anyways, they're talking, and like I said, the only thing I can think of this scene is that both of them just starts ripping on white people and start ripping on Hal Jordan. Jon Stewart asks, "Why are you married to a white man if you have such contempt for the white man?" She goes, "I love this white man. This white man loves me." And she asks him back, "Well, what about your white man?" As if Jon Stewart owns Hal Jordan. Now, imagine if Jon Stewart was actually Hal Jordan and she asked that same question to him, "Oh, where's your black man?" Everybody would be out of their goddamn minds with the way she asked that question. "What do you mean, where's your black man?" You think Hal Jordan owns Jon Stewart? It was an absurd, stupid question, and this entire scene is absurd. Same show that I was watching, casual reviewers saying you could have had a redemption here for Jon Stewart by having him just stay at the booth and not have any type of interaction with this woman. Nope. Plot convenience requires Jon Stewart and this woman to have this interaction, which is an utterly meaningless interaction. It doesn't contribute anything to the story at all. It could have been left on the chopping block on the table, and that'd have been that. But again, only thing I can think of is that men like Tom King and Damon Lindelof, or David Lindelof, or whatever his name is, and James Gunn, they like seeing their women be done and run through by other men because they like being cucked. That's the only thing I could think of. Anyways, Cromartie's wife decides to give Jon Stewart a ride back to the motel where the Hal Jordan is waiting for him, sitting out there having his beer. He has the lantern with him. He also has something else with him as he's walking up to Hal Jordan, which, by the way, I'm just trying to think where Hal Jordan's house was located. I think it was located somewhere on the East Coast. It's kind of interesting that he flew back and he's back in Nebraska so quickly. Maybe if you guys know where Hal Jordan's house was located, jump in, put it in chat for me and everything. But that seems like a really quick turnaround. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it's already nighttime on the same day. I don't think that there's that kind of traveling inside of the United States. But again, you guys let me know. I don't do that much traveling. Maybe there might be that kind of fast travel where you can fly to another state and right back, and it be the same day. I did it back in the day with I had to fly to California for an interview and I flew back. But I live in Arizona, so that basically is just a bus ride, the equivalent of a bus ride. It was a couple of hours to San Francisco, had my interview, and it was flying back. By the way, that interview was at IGN. This was way back in the day. I want to say I was about maybe 21, maybe 22, and I had an interview with IGN. Man, I wish I could have gotten that job. It was only paying about $35,000, which I thought was pretty good money at the time. But this is San Francisco after all, so I'm pretty sure I still would have been a struggling student at the time. But being on the ground floor at IGN before it got sold, I forgot how much it got sold for. But man, that would have been a really good payday for me. But I digress. I'm just reminiscing on old times. I'm actually kind of glad at the same time, I'm glad that I didn't get into it with IGN, because IGN is just a laughing stock within the gaming industry, within the gaming community. People just be making fun of it all the time. Anyways, back to this right here. Hal Jordan sitting out. Jon Stewart sees his arm is in the sling, but him being the uncaring bastard that he is, he just tosses this bag right at Hal Jordan, and you see Hal Jordan just caught it. Yo, dude's in a sling, man. But he catches it like it's nothing. Like his arm is already fully healed. I'm pretty sure that Hal Jordan or Green Lanterns do not have a healing factor without using their ring, and that ring is at 0%. It's has no juice, which is why he needed the lantern to begin with. But he catches it. His arm is just fine. And then right in the next scene, he just takes before we go to that next scene, he pulls out the lantern and he begins charging it. And I think this is probably one of the most disrespectful things that this show does with the Green Lanterns and Hal Jordan in particular. He just runs right through his saying in darkest and brightest day and darkest night, no evil shall escape my sight. All who fears Green Lantern's light, or something to that effect. He just runs right through it. There's no emotion in it. It just seems that he didn't care to say it whatsoever. Now there might be something within this character arc as to why he hates being a Green Lantern now. Nerdrotic theorizes he's going to become Parallax at some point during this series. I don't know, but right now there really isn't a good explanation as to why Jon Stewart has such contempt for Hal Jordan, why Hal Jordan has such contempt for being a Green Lantern. All I'm getting off of it right now is that these showrunners, these writers, they don't like these characters whatsoever. And so they make Hal Jordan just run through his saying. This could have been a touching moment where there is still a piece of Hal Jordan that says, I like being Green Lantern. And it could have been this point right here where he is doing his saying and he's putting emotional weight in the words that he's saying as he's saying his motto. No, we're just gonna run through it and we're just gonna go back to having this tense relationship between these two characters. And within the bag, he also notices that Jon Stewart brought his outfit, and they get into a little bit of a tussle over that. And he doesn't appreciate it. He tells Jon Stewart, "I hope your insurance is all paid up on the rental vehicle." We get this tour of the vehicle. Hal Jordan sees all this stuff that's going on, the blood of the aliens that was right there, which, by the way, well, why would there be alien goo in the car if they're dead? There shouldn't be any more fluids on them. Maybe was the body decomposing while Hal Jordan was driving around with them in the car? Maybe it was, which is kind of macabre on the part of Hal Jordan. He first sees the front of the grill is gone, and that's what sparks this entire conversation about hope your insurance is paid up on that, because when he turns it into the rental car company, he's gonna obviously have to pay a lot of money on the insurance, or the insurance claim that's gonna be filed. And then in the last scene between these two, Hal Jordan gets up. He just takes his sling off as if it's nothing. He just pops up out of it, takes the sling off, and starts moving around, shakes his arm off. Who cares? It was just a bullet through your arm. By the way, the construct is still around. And Hal Jordan does ask something about the construct, why it's still there, and if there's a reason, if there's a meaning as to why Jon Stewart created this construct, this particular construct, which was like a swallow or a little bird. And Jon Stewart says, no, there's no meaning to this construct. I just created it, and he makes it disappear right here. Never gave a really good explanation as to why Jon Stewart was able to make that construct and keep that construct around with him, despite the fact not having Hal Jordan's ring. The aliens that kidnapped him have brought up the exact same question as well. Hopefully they'll explain that in the upcoming episodes. Maybe Jon Stewart rather doesn't need a ring. Maybe he himself is the battery for whatever the ring is supposed to represent, and he can make these constructs without having to use a ring or anything. That'd be kind of interesting. It would break the lore of a Green Lantern, but we've already established that these are not the actual characters from the comic books. This is not Jon Stewart. That's not Hal Jordan. These are figments of Tom King's imagination and David Lindelof's, or David Lindelof, or however you say his name, imagination. James Gunn does not respect the source material. I don't think any of these guys really like comic books. Tom King was a comic book writer for a minute there, but that doesn't necessarily mean you like comic books. I mean, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote Black Panther and wrote Captain America. That fool definitely does not like comic books. He's a race hustler and just like to throw shit out there. He's a bomb thrower, a racial bomb thrower. So simply because you write comic books does not mean you like comics. Anyways, Jon Stewart makes that construct disappear. That's the end of the conversation between these two. Jon Stewart goes back into the house. And I know some people were saying that they didn't think that Hal Jordan would put on the costume until the last episode. Well, that's not true, because he actually puts on the costume in this episode. So he doesn't thank Jon for bringing the costume to him. Here we see Jon Stewart in the full regalia of the Green Lantern. Now, my thinking is, I thought these guys could make, and it's another situation where these guys, these writers, really don't care about the source material. I thought they could make the outfit with the ring themselves. I've watched enough Justice League Unlimited to know that Jon Stewart can create that outfit, his uniform, without actually having to change like he's Batman or Superman. Same way with Hal Jordan. I've seen Hal Jordan construct his uniform around him. Nope. Not in this one. Hal Jordan had to put on the uniform physically, and now he's going to get ready to fly off into space. I actually like this scene right here. This is actually the only scene where I'm like, you know what? Now I can appreciate the comic book nature of this show. This for me was the most impressive scene so far of this series. Well, I was impressed by the scene inside the jail cell where Hal Jordan committed his heroic act and stopped the alien from blowing up the building that they were in. But I also like this right here. If this show was more of a cosmic show like it should be, I think it would be so much better. But we are getting this True Detective wannabe show on Earth, as opposed to stuff that's happening out in space and happening on different planets. I like this shot right here. This is Hal Jordan flying onto a distant planet, because this is a prison colony. That crevice right there, it happens to be a prison colony. He walks in. We see this prison system that he's walking through, and he's there to see Sinestro. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, just going back to this scene right here where they're at the motel, Jon Stewart does happen to tell Hal Jordan about his run-in with the aliens and ask Hal Jordan about manhunters. And the reason why Hal Jordan got up out of his seat and took the sling off of him was because he asked Jon Stewart, where did you hear that name Manhunter? And that's where Jon Stewart recounts his interaction with the aliens to Hal Jordan. And Hal Jordan basically blows him off about manhunters and says that's something that you shouldn't have to worry about. But of course, he was keeping that to himself because he's doing this investigation on his own. So he flies back to that prison colony where Sinestro is located, and he asks Sinestro, "What do you know about the manhunters?" And Sinestro responds back to him, "What is it? Why is it that you want to know about the second most dangerous man that's on your planet? And why don't you tell me about Jon Stewart?" So we got some more mystery boxing going on there. He says the second most dangerous man behind the manhunters. Like, well, what else is also on the planet Earth that's dangerous. Is he talking about Superman? Although James Gunn's Superman, that guy is weak. He just kept getting dog walked in his own movie. He was always getting his ass whooped, and it still pisses me off that Mr. Terrific cucked Superman in his own movie. That just pisses me off to no end. I didn't think Mr. Terrific's scene in James Gunn's Superman was all that impressive. I thought it was very disrespectful to Superman and to the movie itself. But again, this is James Gunn. He likes seeing men get cut. But back to this show right here. This is where the episode ends. We get introduced to Sinestro, which the makeup design for Sinestro isn't all that good. It's kind of interesting that we got an old man that looks like Sinestro, and he's just wearing red makeup on him. And they're having this discussion, and that's pretty much it. And this last scene right here, it's like as he's talking, his teeth, it's like he's talking with his teeth missing. Because all I can see is just his lips keep smacking together, as though you're like an old person who wears dentures and you took your dentures out for the night. He's rubbing his lips together, trying to keep his mouth moist because they keep sticking together. Ah, man, I tell you. Overall, this show is just absolutely atrocious. I shouldn't say this show. This episode was absolutely atrocious. It is such a downgrade from last week's episode. I thought last week's episode was intriguing. It did intrigue me to want to keep on following. This episode right here makes me want to bail out. I just lost all interest with the characters. I don't care for any of these characters. I really don't. Hal Jordan was fine in the first episode, and that was based on the performance of Kyle Chandler. He did a really good job for Hal Jordan. Jon Stewart, oh my God, that dude is just an asshole. I don't like that guy. I don't like that Jon Stewart. Compare that Jon Stewart to the one that we grew up with in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. That Jon Stewart, that was the one that is the Green Lantern for me, more so than Hal Jordan, even though I was familiar with Hal Jordan before Jon Stewart. And we don't want to get into the race swap debate or all that, because you can make an argument that it was a race swap, but at the same time, it's the Green Lantern Corps. So it's already been established in the continuity for the comics that multiple people can have a Green Lantern ring. So I don't think it was a race swap or anything. I think he's just an individual, unique character. And he did exist at the same time as Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart did. So it wasn't really a race swap. So anyone that makes that argument, you're just flying up the wrong shoe with that one. That Jon Stewart was compelling and likable. He had character flaws and weaknesses, but at the same time, he struggled to be as good of a hero as he possibly could. This Jon Stewart in this show, he is just a straight asshole. I don't care to see his story. I don't care about his character arc. I don't care to see that he becomes a Green Lantern. In fact, I would want him not to become a Green Lantern. He doesn't exhibit any kind of qualities that would be conducive to being a good Green Lantern. He just comes off as aloof and an asshole and just unnecessarily aggressive towards Hal Jordan for no reason. The super cop girl boss, she's forgettable. I like the fact that she's from Gotham City, but that was just a line drop. The Cromartie rancher, don't care about him. I definitely don't like his wife. His wife is the avatar for all of modern women in America. And if you know what's been going on with modern women in America, you follow this shit with this Lindsay Clancy woman who murdered her babies. And now we got all these women that are sympathizing with this murderer because, oh, women will suffer from postpartum psychosis and postpartum depression. We gotta sympathize. And we're just all one step away from just being like Lindsay Clancy. this gilf in this show is that representation of all those women. I hate that woman. It's like, ugh. No, there's no likable characters in this show. Maybe Sinestro might come off likable. Maybe I might be a Sinestro fan. If he turns out to be a good, compelling character, maybe I might just become a Sinestro fan. Oh boy, I tell you. If I were to give this episode, I didn't give the first episode a grade because I didn't really review it, but this one I am reviewing. I'm gonna give this one. I'll give it a. I'll give it a 4.5. I'll give this a 4.5. This show is nowhere near the Penguin. Anybody that says that this is just like the Penguin or is better than the Penguin, they are smoking crack and they are lying to you. This show is nowhere near the Penguin. I know last week's episode got like 9 million views or something like that. Oh, that means it's as popular as the Penguin. No, it doesn't. It just means 9 million people were bored, decided to see what this new show was about. And I'm pretty sure the numbers will go down. I'll be surprised if the numbers increase for this show. This show is just absolute garbage. I keep saying this show. I shouldn't be so judgmental because there's 6 more episodes left. This episode was garbage. Maybe episode 3 might be better. I don't have high hopes for it. But thank you guys for sitting here watching my review of this show. TJM comes in and says, this show is fire. Hey, if you like this show, more power to you. I am happy for you. I'm hoping that this show is meeting your needs. For me, it's not. It just isn't. The first episode, I keep saying this show. I gotta stop saying this show. The first episode I thought was fine. Not fire, but fine. And enough to get me to go into the next episode. But this episode right here, it makes me not want to watch the third episode or any episodes afterwards because it was just that atrocious for me. It was that atrocious. But I'm gonna watch the third episode. I'm gonna finish watching this series out, and by the end of the show, we'll see if it picks up and improves. I doubt it, but hope springs eternal. Anyways, as I was saying, I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me while I give my live review of Lanterns. Lanterns on HBO Max, airs at 9 p.m. Eastern. I think that's 7 p.m. my time. My grade for this episode 2 is 4.5. If I had to give episode 1 a grade, I would give that one. Actually, I did give it a grade because I reviewed it on Critic List. In fact, let's do that right now. Before I check out. Let's go over here to Critic List. This is my Critic List. You guys can follow me over on Critic List. I did give a grade for the first episode. I gave it a 7. I gave the first episode of Lanterns a 7. This one is a 4.5. We got 3 down votes, 6 up votes. I'm like this. I'll update this as I go along because I wish this site will allow you to do individual reviews for individual episodes. They don't allow you to do that, so I can only just do an upgrade, or rather an update. So I'll just say this about episode 2. Episode 2 was episode 1. Decided that I do not like Jon Stewart at all. Hal Jordan regressed as a character for me. Too many plot conveniences to move the story along. Too many nitpicky scenarios that glare because the show itself. All right, not the show, the episode itself was bad. In fact, I don't care for any of the characters so far. That Hal Jordan suit and flies. .5 out of 10. All right, so there we go. I will update that. So yeah, so there we go. First episode I would give a 7, but then this second episode just didn't do it for me. Just didn't do it for me. All right. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Thank you, Captain Giratina Sarge, Avi 8KHI. Thank you very much. And thank you for your comment, TJ. We just disagree. But again, I appreciate everybody that comes over here. I'm not going to ever tell anyone who disagrees with me that you're not welcome here. Everybody is welcome here. I welcome everyone's opinions. We all should be able to agree and disagree on things that we like or don't like and still be cordial at the end. So you guys have yourself a great night. I will catch you guys next Sunday for episode 3 of Lanterns. This Chris Boat sign off. You guys have a great night and enjoy the rest of your evening.